Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching Primetime Asia on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. India's aviation watchdog threatens regulatory action against Indigo after thousands of flight cancellations left passengers stranded for days. The government has moved to cap surging airfares as the airline blames a pilot shortage caused by poor planning for new work hour rules. Hong Kong holds its second legislative election since Beijing's 2021 overhaul, with turnout under scrutiny after a blaze that killed at least 159 people. Early figures show low participation as anger over government accountability lingers. Indian authorities order an inquiry after a nightclub fire in Goa's Aurora village kills 25 people and injures 6. The chief minister says compensation will be given to victims as officials work to determine the cause and the responsibility. Indonesia's flood death toll has climbed above 900, with hundreds still missing after a rare cyclone triggered torrential rain, landslides and massive destruction. Rescue crews are still struggling to reach cut-off communities as survivors describe entire villages swept away and families trapped. Japan says Chinese fighter jets locked radar on its military aircraft near Okinawa in 2 dangerous incidents, prompting a formal protest to Beijing. China disputes Tokyo's account as Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi calls the radar illumination extremely regrettable and a threat to safe flight. Japan and Australia call for calm after Chinese J-15 jets repeatedly locked radar on Japanese jets near Okinawa, sparking a formal protest. Defence Minister Shigeno Koizumi says the dangerous incident violated safe flight norms and demands Beijing take preventative measures. Germany's Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul is set to visit China on December the 8th. The visit aims to address trade tensions, secure critical supplies, and urge Beijing to influence Russia towards peace in Ukraine. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz visits Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, reasserting Berlin's commitment to Israel amid strained ties over the Gaza war. Merz is set for talks with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after stressing that Germany must stand up for Israel. We start this hour in the Indian subcontinent, and the Indigo crisis has stretched into its 6th day. The airline has reportedly cancelled a total of 650 flights today, which includes around 115 flights cancelled at the Hyderabad airport, 112 in Mumbai, 109 in Delhi, 38 in Chennai, and 11 in Amritsar. Since Tuesday, the Indigo airline has cancelled more than 2,000 flights, causing major disruptions to air traffic across India and leaving hundreds of passengers stranded at the airports. As per the latest statement issued by the airline, it is developing, quote, sustained improvements throughout their network and expects for its operations to get stabilised by December the 10th. Now, the Civil Aviation Ministry intervened in the ongoing crisis yesterday and asked the airline to clear refunds for all cancelled and delayed flights to its passengers. It also gave a stipulated timeline for the issuing of refunds, and that is till today, 8 p.m. IST. Now, the central government of India has reported that refunds around 610 crore rupees, or approximately $67.7 million have been processed so far, providing relief to the troubled passengers. Meanwhile, Delhi Airport's GMR has also shared an advisory asking passengers to check their latest flight status before leaving for the airports. It also has informed about an ongoing staff to help with queries and complaints. Moreover, public transport options to and from the airport, including metros, buses and cabs, have also been arranged for public convenience. Joining us now is Vandana Singh. She is an aviation expert. She joins us live from New Delhi. Vandana, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you. What exactly went wrong here, Vandana? Of course, this has stretched into its 6th day now, but what was the root cause?
For having me on your show. It's always an honor. And I've been talking this from day 2. Of course, today's Sunday, which is day 7, what we call in our industry. The root cause is known to all. It is sheer, I would say, abuse of dominance, if I can say that. The Indigo has 62% market share. And the compliance to the FTTL norms, which was not met with. They had about 2 years of time. In fact, all airlines had about 2 years of time to really have their act in order. When it came to really ensuring that the duty time limitations are followed and adhered to, phase 1 started in July. Phase 2 was implemented on November 1st. So all the carriers are very well aware that this was coming in. And this is not something that came out of the blue. In this case, it's clear that they wanted an extension, and they clearly arm-twisted the government by holding the people ransom. I would put it very, very bluntly. Chaos in the skies that we are witnessed throughout this week, and the chaos will only settle down, in my view, by about 15th. Because the entire backlog has to be cleared. The entire, passengers who are stranded, that has to be first cleared. And then, of course, the people who were already booked. So it's kind of a ripple effect. And rightfully, the government, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation in this case, has given a show cause notice to Indigo to really come up with their explanations within 24 hours of receiving it. Failing which, investigation can lead to even a criminal inquiry or judicial probe. So we are at that stage right now when a particular airline who has a big share, dominating share in the market, really behaves like a spoiled child and refuses to do its own homework. They had no pilots. There was a hiring. What shall I say, a freeze on hiring of pilots. And why did they not have their pilots in place? Winter season right now, with additional 6% flights, 821 flights added since October 26th. Where were the pilots? So this was, as per me, artificially induced by Indigo. Over to you, Thomas.
Yes, and Vandana, what seemed to be particularly poor, of course, was the passenger communication. Why does it remain to be so poor, despite repeated incidents like this, industry-wide in India?
It is quite sad, Thomas. Initially, we have not had that issue from Indigo because people have been satisfied flying Indigo. This is how Indigo achieved the 63 or 65% market share, because everybody liked their punctuality, their on-time performance, and their lean, mean approach. But when the lean, mean approach is going towards your own crew, towards your own pilots, and you're not really addressing the fatigue risk management system as per the ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization mandate and rules, then it's really not fair. So, all in all, definitely this is totally Indigo at fault. And as far as communication is concerned, which is your question, as I said, so far the communication would be very, very prompt. I've always traveled Indigo. I would get very prompt updates regarding my web check-in, regarding my baggage arrival at which belt, which gate to go to, etc., etc., etc. But everything has collapsed as of now, and whosoever we are talking to is not getting messages. People who are supposed to fly on 2nd of December and 3rd of December are getting messages as of last evening. It was 6th evening. So that is chaos. That just shows that the whole meltdown happened, the collapse, the chaos happened, and communication went haywire. And as I said, this wasn't the case with Indigo before, but it is a sorry state of affairs, and they have to get their act in order. Otherwise, they stand to face the courts of India, and they will have to pay heavy penalties, not just to the public who has been totally harassed, if I can say that, but also they owe it to the country for the mess that they have created. Over to you, Thomas.
Vandana Singh, thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you here on the programme. We now move on, but stay in India. And a devastating fire at a nightclub in Goa has killed 25 people, and authorities have now launched a full probe into the tragedy. The blaze broke out just after midnight at the Birch nightclub in Arpora village in the North Goan region, triggering panic as people rushed to escape. Chief Minister Pramod Sawant confirmed that several victims died from suffocation while others suffered severe burn injuries. He called the incident a very painful day for Goa and announced a magisterial inquiry to identify the cause and fix responsibility. Sawant also said the nightclub operated without proper permissions, a failure that may have contributed to the tragedy. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi also spoke to the Chief Minister and expressed condolences to the families. The Prime Minister's office announced compensation for the victims and the injured. Rescue teams worked through the night to control the blaze and recover bodies. Officials suspect a cylinder blast as investigators examine the site. We will, of course, bring you all updates here on NewsX World as we get the information from that situation. We now move on. Japan is accusing China of two dangerous mid-air confrontations near Okinawa. Tokyo says Chinese fighter jets aimed their radar at Japanese military aircraft, a move Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi called extremely regrettable and potentially threatening. However, China denies the claim, saying Japanese planes disrupted its carrier-based drills near the Miyako Strait. The incidents come as tensions between the two countries spike over Taiwan. Tokyo has warned it could respond if a Taiwan crisis threatens Japan's security. Meanwhile, Australia has also backed Japan, calling China's actions deeply concerning. China has also increased its military activity across East Asian waters, deploying more than 100 naval and Coast Guard vessels in recent days. Taiwan says the surge in drills amounts to harassment and psychological pressure, adding to rising instability in the region. Joining us now is Major General R. Sudhakar-ji. He's an international relations and defence expert. He joins us live from New Delhi, and also joining us is Dr. Asta Chadha. She is an associate professor of international relations at Ritsumeikan University, located in Kyoto in Japan. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us here on NewsX World. I want to start with Major General G first. Of course, Sanai Takaichi used the exact same language when it came to her previous comments about Taiwan. She called this incident extremely regrettable, the same words that she used about possible military action in Taiwan for Japan. What are your thoughts on this current situation, Major General G, and how it might escalate?
Good evening, Thomas. Thank you for getting me for your show, and my best wishes to my co-panelists, distinguished co-panelists. As regards the question, it's my take on the whole issue is that there is a huge potential for flare-up. Perhaps the situation has become so volatile, it was as if waiting for a little trigger. Therefore, there is a requirement to exercise restraint. Unfortunately, the focus and attention of the world order has not gravitated to South China Sea, and the media also has not been playing its role. Whenever it is showcased or brought anything to the notice of the people of the planet, it has been merely a Chinese vessel ramming into a vessel of Philippines, and that's all. Now, this particular incident, it reminds me the huge volatility and the sensitivity that lies dormant or lingering since ages between Japan and China. Particularly, if you take your mind back, in 2010, there was a vessel of China which rammed into another vessel of Japan near Sikanko Island, if I respect my memory, Diao Island. And the captain of the ship was apprehended. He was subjected to judicial trial, and China, as expected for the first time, and came out with total vindictiveness and weaponized the supply of rare earth element. I recall that was the turning point, that a politicization of rare earth element turning into weaponization, that was on the sea. Now this incident is very, very dangerous. It is happening in the sky. Anything happening in the sky, we have very little control except for the electromagnetic and the cyber linkages that we have and the satellite communication. So therefore, there is a danger to the aerial platform, there is a danger to the pilot, there is a danger also of crossing each other's border, and this may actually escalate the hostilities and bring about a situation which may be beyond control. Back to you, Thomas.
Yes, I want to bring in Dr. Chadha next. Of course, joining us from Japan. Dr. Chadha, Japan is accusing China of these two radar lock incidents, which is, of course, a combat precursor. From your reading of the region, how credible is Tokyo's version of events here?
I mean, it's quite credible because it's not just Japan that is responding to this incident, it's Australia as well. And, you know, as we are speaking, there's already been a meeting between the defense ministers of Japan and Australia with regards to East China Sea security as well as the wider security in the Indo-Pacific. So, I mean, the concerns here are twofold. I mean, one is that from China's side, China looks at both Australia, Japan as nations that have started voicing their concerns with regards to China exercising its influence in East China Sea. They see China looks at Australia and Japan trying to respond in a very aggressive manner when they use the words such as, you know, equating Taiwanese security with that of the Japanese security. But on the Japan and Australian side, they're trying to at least keep the peace, or trying to at least, you know, not escalate further. They've lodged their, you know, disapproval with China's behavior. They've said that it is, you know, it is a serious violation of their of Japanese sovereignty in some way, or it is in a way is being seen as an escalation of conflict, or because, you know, of what's happening with the Japanese jets being, you know, this whole idea of a locked fire control radar onto Japanese jets. This is seen as a violation. However, we must understand that, you know, these incidents it is not just a new or one-off incident. Previously, Taiwan had shared intel with its Indo-Pacific partners stating that China was conducting such drills and it was targeting any foreign vessel close to Taiwan as well. And you know, this is part of the China's gray zone tactics. So overall, at least from here, speaking from here in Japan, there is a serious concern. At the same time, it is not that escalatory that Japan is worried, because Japan has partners. Countries like Australia, United States do understand the vulnerability of Japan geographically and even diplomatically. So Japan is not alone in this. That being said, the relations between Japan and China are worsening, and they have definitely touched a low, as my fellow panelist was earlier mentioning. They've definitely touched a low, and we are seeing an increasing, just as he mentioned, securitization or weaponization of, whether it's tech or it's rare earths from China. So we are looking at the region continuing to face this heated situation for a while. Yes,
and Dr. Chada, I just want to stay with you. This is Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi, Japan's first female prime minister's first major security crisis in office, and it has come very soon. How likely do you think is her government likely to capitalize on this or possibly mismanage it?
I mean, I don't see any, as of now, given the way she's handling the whole security crisis, I don't see it being mismanaged in any way. However, it needs to be acknowledged that definitely it is in her term. And given that she's taken a very strong stance, and, in some ways that was her long-standing stance, given that she's been an Prime Minister Abe protege, we could see her line of politics and her ultra-conservative sort of stance with regard to China specifically. So this was bound to happen, and we were seeing that Japan would take a very strong stance compared to the previous prime ministers, at least. So that's that. However, I must also point out that this is not just a very international or a bilateral issue for Japan. There's also a lot of domestic politics engaged in the way Prime Minister Takaichi is responding to this crisis. And I'm speaking this in the backdrop of the kind of sort of rising discontent that is rising in Japan with regards to the foreigners, or with the fact that Japan is trying to tighten its land ownership laws. And, a lot of those are not specifically targeted at Chinese, but it does happen that a lot of East Asians are the ones that end up buying lands in Japan, or maybe, they end up owning properties in Japan. So it's for Sanai Takaichi's government, it's a twofold sort of, a challenge. She needs to manage foreign relations with the people who now live in Japan as foreign residents. And also she needs to manage this crisis, which is now an international crisis and has wider Indo-Pacific security implications.
Dr. Astha Chadha, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. We now move on and stay in the region, of course, and campaigning for Hong Kong's Patriots-only Legislative Council election is subdued as the city continues to mourn the victims of its deadliest fire in nearly 80 years. Candidates have pledged to make disaster recovery their top priority amid a sombre public mood. The city is holding elections for the Legislative Council, in which only candidates vetted as quote-unquote patriots by the China-backed Hong Kong government may run. Campaign flags fluttered from a footbridge near the Election Committee constituency polling station in the district of Wan Chai, where 50 candidates are competing for 40 seats. Let's take a listen in to what one of the candidates had to say.
即係我諗全世界人都知啦，都見到啦。我哋經歷咗一個火災之後咧，其實一切都改變咗啦。我政綱裏邊嘅一啲建議倡議咧，實際上可能入到立法會，如果有幸入到立法會咧，都係要停一步。但係反而咧就係我哋依家最緊要嘅就係個災後復原，同埋我哋點樣去建立一個更有韌性嘅社會。因為咧，其實我哋要俾到大家睇到一個更安全、更有持續發展，同埋要讓國際對香港重新建立信心嘅一個社會。當你候選人嘅身份，其實有好多嘢我哋。即使係大家好有心想落現場幫手做啲嘢可能我哋都避免人哋以為你想做啲乜嘢，即係個人嘅宣傳咁樣。咁所以就我會覺得咧，盡快去處理咗個選舉，無論個結果如何，都可以讓大家回復普通人嘅身份落去幫手做嘢。咁呢個我覺得係我哋最重要嘅精神。並且其實係要讓到立法會係正常去運作，先至能夠係讓我哋各項嘅規劃咧可以盡快上馬。
Major General G joins us once again. I want to focus in on this Patriots-only election system here. 50 candidates for only 40 seats, but of course all pre-approved. The electorate is restricted to these candidates, vetted as these so-called patriots, so-called what China brands as patriots. How meaningful is this election in terms of choice, accountability and legitimacy, especially, of course, in the wake of this terrible tragedy that's occurred?
Thomas, it's a very relevant question, and my take on the whole issue is that Hong Kong administration would do well to be realistic and be pragmatic. Now, a pointed answer to your question, I personally feel my take is that the outcome of the elections are not going to be indicative towards a progressive and developmental roadmap of Hong Kong. Given the fact that the last Legislative Council election was held in 2021, the voter turnout was 30.2%. In the backdrop of this multi-story building in Tau Poi, because of acceptance of inferior quality raw material, the public seem to have got outraged and lost faith and credibility in the existing administration. And their demand was to actually postpone the elections. But the fact of the matter is that they are not prepared. There is a divide between the administration and the public, the voters who are, I think, 4.13 million or so. And so this divide, how it is going to be bridged, my only fear is that it may lead to a potential breakout of Gen Z warfare or hybrid warfare inside Hong Kong, despite the Chinese or the PLA in different forms and contours coming down heavily on them. Because this Gen Z has got different modes and methods to actually operate. And this can be highly dangerous and is pointing towards turning into a kind of a volatile situation in times ahead. And this may impact the economy of Hong Kong, which is facing very headwinds of late. And besides the economy, the security situation in Hong Kong itself is going to be very, very vulnerable and will demand definitive imperatives of management, effective management and administration for things to stabilize. Back to you, please.
Yes, Dr. Chadha joins us once again to discuss this. Let's talk about the same issue here. Of course, Hong Kong's election, 50 candidates for 40 seats, all pre-approved. Is this essentially a managed selection process rather than an election?
I mean, you're right, Thomas. This is definitely selective. I mean, we is, it only has, as you mentioned, candidates who are referred to as patriots, and that has been done effectively in some way to sideline or shut down the pro-democracy opposition that has existed in Hong Kong. So the idea is that the government is currently trying, or let's say the Chinese government is currently trying to drive up both the voter turnout and trying to also suppress any critical commentary or any voices of dissent or any voices of anger from the public, right? And in backdrop of what happened, there's another layer of grief with regards to the fire incident that happened. A lot of people who have lost their lives, the affected families, the ones who were displaced, so there's another layer of anger in public, at least if you look at it from that perspective. And the third aspect of this elections is that there has been a complete erosion of voices from the ground. The fellow panelists here mentioned about Gen Z, right? I mean, their voices, their right to, in some way, expression, hollowing out of the entire civil society. So all of these grassroots efforts that were in some way at some point picking or holding ground, they have pretty much been, trampled upon. So given that, this election is probably, I mean, in light of all of this election, can it bring about a huge change? It's quite unlikely because, as you mentioned, it's quite managed. However, there could be, we could see some backlash from people, specifically given that there is this emotional and political complexity this time in the backdrop of this fire incident that happened, where people are very, very seriously, how I would say, they're emotionally in some way damaged. They feel let down by the government. They see there has been a regulatory oversight with regard to the management of the crisis, with regard to how much they can express online about this. They are suspecting a lot of bid rigging that must have happened because of the poor quality of the edifice that had caught fire. And then lastly, the impact would be on elections, probably in a way that people might, as is, the voter turnouts have been low, and this might lead to people
Yes.
in some way trying to either boycott the elections or just not going out to vote, because they pretty much want to go against the government effort, which is to show that they are achieving some stability. So people might go from stability towards more chaos.
Yes, Dr. Chadha and Major General G, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. It's a pleasure to have you. And for our final story, we head over to Indonesia. And according to the government data, the combined death toll across Indonesia's 3 provinces on the Sumatra island due to recent flooding and landslides has now reached 916, while 274 others still remain missing. In the event of the worsening crisis, the local officials on the island have now called on the national government in Jakarta to declare the recent series of flooding and landslides a state of national emergency, which could help free up additional funds for rescue and relief efforts. In Indonesia's Aceh Taimang district, which is a particularly isolated area, people reportedly struggled to get clean water. However, heavy equipment and food supplies were able to access the area last Thursday, which brought the first batch of relief to its residents. Let's in fact now listen in to some local residents from that area.
Alhamdulillah kami bisa dapat air bersih karena selama ini kami lupa yang kami masak. Air bersih susah kali sudah sampai 9 hari kami tidak dapat air bersih. Baru inilah kami dapat air bersih, bisa kami masak dengan sehat untuk keluarga kami di pengungsian. Dari bantuan-bantuan dari sanak saudara yang memberi, itu pun kami ada pernah makan sudah beras terendam, kami cuci seadanya dengan air lumpur, air yang keruh itu, air sungai itu, ya udah kami masak, itulah yang kami makan walaupun rasanya agak asam-asam gitu.
Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more updates from around the globe.